Secretary of the Prime Minister. Thank you all for returning for this session. We promise to make it an exciting one for you. Yeah, we have about 3 more guests that we're just waiting for. We're not going to get started until they're here, and so we make a clarion call for them to join us on the stage, at which time we will begin. Give and take just 2 minutes, and we're going to get started, okay? Gentlemen, y'all all right? Good. 2 minutes. Session. Once again, my name is Bakisha Parker Edgecombe, and I will serve as your facilitator for this session. Thank you so much for returning. Minister Kwesi Thompson, fellow colleagues, Mr. Ian Roll of the Grand Bahama Port Authority, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming. Good afternoon. We're going to get started. I know all of you would have been here this morning, and you would have been enticed with exactly how we are going to turn Grand Bahama into a tech hub. And I'm happy that you have returned to get even more information. Our session today, in this session, will deal exclusively with how we can create a competitive edge. How will we be able to compete a competitive edge, or rather create? With that being said, I will introduce my platform guest, at which time I will ask each of you to come up and give us your presentation, just about a minute or two, on how we can do that, followed by questions that will be posed to you in moving forward. Is that good for you? All righty. Please welcome, as a part of our panel, Diedrich Adderley of Quantum Data Solutions. Diedrich. Who will come and give us a 2-minute presentation on how we can create a competitive advantage.
Able to hear me?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. All right.
Excellent.
He can sit and speak. Go right ahead.
So my name is Diedrich Adderley. I am native to Grand Bahama. I went to St. Paul's, grew up here. And as a local Bahamian entrepreneur, I understand our environment. I understand our requirements, and I think I'm in a position to say that. Our greatest asset that we have, our competitive edge that we have here in Grand Bahama, is our human capital. We have a lot of local talent. And if given the opportunity, I think if we polish them up, help them out as much as possible, we can create several opportunities for companies here to utilize a lot of our local talent.
All right. I look forward to hearing more from you. Welcome also Mr. James Clark of Global Sun Integration Management. Mr. Clark.
Good afternoon. My name is James Clark, CEO and founder of Global Sun Integration Management. I'm Bahamian, live and reside in, yeah, that's important. Live in Nassau. Actually do a lot of business and consulting in Freeport. Like Mr. Ali said, we actually done some projects together. I think and one of the key things in also creating a competitive advantage for the tech hub would be actually creating what you would call a hybrid scholastic approach with University of Bahamas, allowing technical vocational schools like that of DeVry with BTVI, where you actually garnish the skills and help to what we would call the human capital to actually develop into providing the talent for the technology hub. I think this is key because at the end of the day, I know I went to school, I got a 4-year degree, but I mean, let's be honest. I mean, I did Cal 2, and I can't tell you up to date what I never used Cal 2 yet. So, I mean, the elective subjects are key, but you have some key persons that they want to focus on that technical area where they actually could be benefit to actually, either become a technical specialist in a particular area or become an expert and open up their own business.
Thank you very much. Please welcome Mr. Bahamas Digital Solutions himself, C. Alan Johnson.
Thank you, thank you. I think our greatest competitive advantage is location, location, location. I know we are here concerning, first let me just introduce myself. I am C. Alan Johnson. I've been involved with computers for a little over 35 years. I'm from the era of the punch cards. Going in the pre-80s, I had the opportunity to work at IBM at the time when they were developing the IBM PC Junior, and the laptop. I've had the opportunity to work with some of the giants in the industry. I've worked for companies that no longer exist, such as Burroughs and other different individuals that I've acted as consultancy over the last 35 years. Technology is all I know. I live, breathe, dream it. The competitive advantage we have is location, location, absolutely location. And the point is that we are here in a discussion for a technology hub. And I don't want to broaden the conversation, but I see Freeport or Grand Bahama as a whole as a gateway to the technology hub known as the Bahamas. I think that we have the absolute potential for, based on our constitutional structure, where we guarantee privacy, where we are moving now into an era of away from secrecy and no taxes, where we can bring in legislation to afford us the opportunity to be low tax, to make those attractive to those digital companies. We also have the protection of privacy. We become a privacy low tax environment where we can become the hub for database management and information. We can become the home to fintech, regtech, educational technology. You know, we have thousands of individuals every year that's denied access to the United States, where we can make this an environment for where those students attend a digital environment where we have MOOC, the type of environment for education online that we can actually have here. What we have is we have the opportunity where we say Donald Trump is doing us a big favor. Those thousands of individuals where we have an aggressive immigration reform policy for protection of citizenship for Bahamians, that we can begin to create those type of digital workspaces, because we have the infrastructure, and where Donald Trump don't want them into America, we have the digital infrastructure that allow those companies to be located here and give access to their servers. I mean, we have the opportunity that I put to you that we could absolutely transform the Caribbean and actually the world. And I do believe that locally as well as internationally, we possess the digital capital. I know from growing up, the number, being in the US, the number of Bahamians that are just looking for the opportunity to come home. And with all due respect, they're not looking for jobs. They're looking for an opportunity to be integrated into a system that allow for themselves to be self-empowered. And let me say, Hawksbill High.
Yeah. Close it out like that, right? Please put your hands together for Mr. Demarius Cash of Network Security.
Good afternoon. My company's name is Network and Security Consulting Group. My name is Demarius Cash. Just to give you a brief history, I left the Bahamas on a track scholarship, ran Division I track, trained with a lot of people in this room like Troy, McIntosh, and our Minister Lewis. So we didn't know each other on the track level. But then in terms of my path, I was a math major. And, you know, called back home, my sister said, hey, math ain't gonna take you nowhere in the world. So I said, let me do computer engineering. So I did computer engineering, got my degree and everything. And what happened, I was on job at Atlantis and was always wanted more. And did a lot of big projects, Miss Universe, did IT work for that, and all kind of big projects, but I always wanted more. So I stepped out and formed Network and Security Consulting Group. And where I see Freeport, Grand Bahama, the competitive edge, if you look at Silicon Valley, one thing that it's around, it's University of Stanford. And I think right here we have UB. And UB is a good model where we could start research and development. And if you look at research and development, you look at everyone is doing it now. The US is big on that. And we know our Eastern partners, China is big on research and development. And first we can look at needs assessments and then run into research and development. So that's critical when you're looking at anything you're dealing with technology, because we gotta push that type of skill set out in this community and this economy.
Thank you very much. Of Convergence, please welcome to the stage Kimberly King-Burns.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me at this point? Can you hear me?
Yes. No?
No? Can you? Testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing.
Yeah.
I completely agree with what C. Allen said. And I call you C. Allen because we're Facebook friends. It's okay. Hey, man, this is how we stay in touch. The opportunity is for Grand Bahama to set the stage for creating an entire archipelago. I mean, we are unique as a small island nation in being able to showcase and support a variety of technologies. And unlike Bangalore and Kuala Lumpur and Mexico, I don't think we need to necessarily be the low-cost technology health sector. I think we have a real opportunity to become the Saudi Arabia of the Caribbean with regard to alternative energy, clean technology, air-to-water condensation. Water is going to become as important as fuel in the next 10 years, and we are physically, geographically, and financially located to take perfect advantage of that. And what's interesting is that I haven't heard much in the way of this conversation over the last 5 years, but you do have investors that want to create jobs, and they want to make investments to secure visas. So while we are talking about developing an easier protocol to import skilled workers, I would like to suggest that we consider embracing the EB-5 style program that's available across North America, wherein in the US, an immigrant would pay $500,000 and hope to invest in a company that created 10 jobs over a 2-year period. In Canada, the same program is a 700,000 loon investment. There are programs like this around the world. This isn't unique. I think Australia's is probably the most expensive because it's $7 million US. For a single visa, you do have to have the job creation in part. But I think that there's a real opportunity to introduce a similar program here because there are wealthy entrepreneurs as well. We don't have to be hat in hand. We've got the human capital. We've got the entrepreneurial drive. I mean, I grew up in the middle of nowhere. I trained kids that were fixing CPUs with butter knives. We are nothing if not inventive and creative, and we're friendly.
Thank you very much. Thank you. We've been told that Dr. Gadrin Higgs is currently live on a television show, and he will be joining us shortly, and we'll welcome him at that time. In the moment, we'll continue. And this question then is for this session, obviously, creating a competitive edge. Let's begin by establishing what are we doing wrong right now that isn't resulting in us taking advantage of technology the way it ought to be taken advantage of. I'll pose this question to C. Alan Johnson as well as Ms. Kim. If you will kindly inform us as to what are we doing wrong right now that's not getting us to the point where we can take advantage of technology.
After you, sir.
Okay. I think what we're doing wrong is we're looking to the governmental structures to do what is necessary for the development of an industry that requires the collective intelligence of literally hundreds, if not thousands, of individuals. I think what we have to do is we need government to recognize, we need basically 2 things from them. We need legislation that is necessary for whatever it is that we are seeking to do. We need a strategy that is collectively harnessed from us as a group that forms a strategy by which we can each develop our own individual plans. We need the laws that is there, and we need the shifting of policies. But we don't need government to drive industry. Because what happens is when you begin to limit yourself to the intellectual capital of what we call the House of Assembly or even those appointed, you're talking about less than maybe 250 individuals in a country of 250,000 innovative, creative thinkers. If you look at our population demographics, you would find that as much as 60% of them are born into a whole digital era. They are digital citizens. Those of us that is pre-1992, most of us have what is called, you could say maybe a nationalization card for the digital citizenry. Those are born digital. We are naturalized, and then some walking around illegal in the digital world. But if you were to ask young people and you challenge them to simply say, and this is where the human capital comes in. And we talk about our education system, and I challenge any of you as far as the education system is, take an English-speaking child and teach that child in Swahili. And then when the child fails, you say that he couldn't learn. We haven't embraced the language that they speak. And so what we need is government to recognize that we ask them to govern and not manage us. And so if you just create that perfect harmony. And so it isn't where we are trying to dismantle government. I am a strong advocate for a strong municipal type governance. And I think Grand Bahama provides that unique detail for even if it doesn't transition to it in the immediate, it allows for us to have an actual conversation concerning transformation of how we think, how we are governed, and how we are in the global marketplace. I have absolutely no doubt in my mind. Just one point. I am what they call, I live in what most people call a metaverse. That's where most people live in multiple places in the future. And so I understand, and I talk to young people all the time. They live in these metaverses, and it's an idea for where they live and where they exist, where they want us to move to, but we don't give them the opportunity to describe or express it. And so what we simply say, this is what you're going to have. And so what we want is less governance and more development.
Thank you very much. Ms. Burns? What are we doing wrong?
I think you do have some unique opportunities here because in many ways we are a number of countries within one country. And yes, the Nassau-centric approach is to expect government to lead the way and then the private sector will follow. The Out Islands have largely been ignored. And as a result, I think we've built a certain resilience and savvy based on need. And Grand Bahama is unique in that it straddles both of those cultures, but you have a sense of history here that gets transferred. My biggest frustration, because I've been consulting with the Bahamas government since I was 16, and my first project was with the Ministry of Youth and Sports probably in the 1980s. There isn't a transfer of knowledge from one administration to the next. So you're constantly having to push the same rock up the same hill, and then you bait and switch, and the administration changes, which is why I'm resolutely apolitical. But as our new Minister of Parliament for North Eleuthera, who is our first Rylander ever, I knew we had a Lutheran in there, but as Ricky Mackey has said, what we would like Nassau to do is to give us permission, not stand in our way. Just let us go, let us produce, because we've shown that we can stick microwaves in palm trees to build Wi-Fi networks that Cable Bahamas and Batelco didn't really thought needed to be built south of Rock Sound.
Understood. You want to add to that? Go right ahead.
I think another thing here too, we have to bring some facts, some data into it. If you look at reports that have been surfacing, I think over the last year, the Bahamas, we rank 120 something in ease of doing business. And if you look at, if the government, if we're capturing this data, how are we making it better? We have to try to find solutions to get in that top 30. So a person could come here and invest and open up businesses and stuff like that, because if you look at the top 5, you have New Zealand is number 1 and the US is number 5. So I think the ease of business, opening stuff, going through the whole process, we need to look at that data and see how best we could get in the top 30.
Right. How do we begin that? Clark?
If I can jump in here.
Not a problem.
Just a micro bit. I think that we tend to have administrators dictate to technicians and information officers on how to implement certain technology and how to move things forward in the technological aspect of their business operations. I think what would help is if we actually have engineers or specialists steer the direction of where we should be going. Right?
Will that create the competitive edge, though?
It most definitely will, because we are trained to study business analytics. I walk into an environment and a client starts to tell me about what their challenges are.
Right.
I turn that into bits and bytes and then give it back to you and say, this is where we need to go.
Clark, are we afraid of going there? Is this something that we're just not used to, and because it has changed, we're now afraid to even remotely start it as we should? Are we afraid to go there?
Well, what you're really talking about is actually a culture shift.
Okay.
Because the way we do business now is so much different from what it was back then. Even from when I remember first going to college, I mean, Windows 95 was the latest thing. Now these kids being born with Windows 2010. So I mean, it's like right now it's like the market is prime. But I think to the point is the governance hasn't changed. So we're still trying to govern society with a 1960, 1970 philosophy.
Yeah, old practices.
We're now in 2017.
Okay. Dr. Higgs, we're here and we're in Grand Bahama, and we're hoping to basically kind of label Grand Bahama as that tech hub. What about the landscape and the infrastructure will result in that? Is what's happening on the ground, whether it's industrialization and other businesses popping up, really instrumental or will be instrumental in ensuring that this happens for this island?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I feel as though that it has to come from within the individual to be able to want to see that change. Now, the thing is, there needs to be multiple individuals that want to be a part of this change.
Yeah.
So as we talk about on the policy side, as we talk about on the entrepreneurship side, all of these different individuals sort of need to come to the table to be able to talk about how is it that we can pull everything together to make it a thriving part of our economy.
Right. Does it begin? Go right ahead.
The point I want to make is that I think you hit on a point that in the 21st century, as we move, and a lot of us talk about this knowledge-based economy, we are moving quickly towards what is called, it is a digital economy, but it's not the digital economy. In about 2020, we'll be moving towards that. Data, big data, dark data, which is like how you say you could see the seen world and the unseen world, is one of the most valuable currencies there is. And believe it or not, the intellectual capital we possess is part of that dark data. But the problem that we're having is that there is no outlet. We should have, like we talk about Grand Bahama being the location. We have a unique opportunity to have a wider conversation where we move away from the model of governance. And the beauty about digitalization is that one doesn't replace one in the immediate. They can actually be a two-tiered type environment for those who is afraid to embrace the future. We can go and prepare the future for you, and when you get there, it'll be one you expect.
That's cool.
Not bad at all. Does the competitive edge begin with our youth? And I'm not talking about high school. Does it begin at the preschool level? And how can we implement it at that level without necessarily kind of causing their minds to just, go beyond their years? How can we do it? Right ahead, Ms. Burns.
I would recommend that you not limit your focus to educating children. When IBM Nassau first teamed with us in 1999 and we were going around the out islands training people who wanted to use computers, they wanted to get online and operational, government workers lined up, hotel workers lined up, adult entrepreneurs lined up, kids lined up. There are a lot of people that don't necessarily have the skill set that have a really savvy solution. And I think that you're going to find that from straw workers to PhDs. So I would recommend, given that older Bahamians have a sense of history that the younger kids don't. We were talking about this morning. The textbooks I grew up with were Macmillan Caribbean and specific to the region. The textbooks that you see coming out of Nassau are 15 years old and they were published in Ohio, There's no relevance. The people today under the age of 30 don't understand the importance of the suffragettes. They couldn't tell you Dame Doris Johnson from Lady Marguerite. They just don't have a sense of how powerful on the world stage the Bahamas was in 1967 when majority rule took place and we went from minority rule of a majority population to the conceived majority rule without a shot being fired. That had never been done in the history of the world. Those are the kind of proud moments that we should be celebrating. And I think we're going to need our older generation to be part of this digital media revolution because the information's not on the ground at the moment.
Right. Thank you. You wanted to add to that, Ashley? The competitive edge.
I think also the way to elevate that the topic is to also change the way that we deliver our content to our students. So if we tell them that the way for you to receive this your course line is via a tablet, and you have to go online and you have to pull down your email and see exactly what your deliverables are for homework. I think it elevates the citizenry across the board.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. Go right ahead.
What we have to do is we have to recognize what the United Nations has recognized, that broadband is a human right. And we are in the 21st century. It is not an option anymore, especially in the next 3 years. If you go and you look at Saudi Arabia and the other places where we're going, they are describing the future. What we have to do is we have to unleash the potential of our children by allowing them to have what is called an immersive type environment of learning. Because what we have is, and I think one of you kind of led to it, is what we have is a 20th century leaders using 19th century concepts trying to govern a 21st century country. And so what we have to do is we have to basically, I think for those of us that's older that understand the concept that hindsight is 20/20. If hindsight is 20/20, let's stop existing in the present and stand in the future where we want to be and plot a path back to where we are. And that's the easiest way of doing it as opposed to moving through the maze. The expression is when you look from the top of the maze, you see the beginning, the middle, and the end. Those in the maze only see the path they're walking. So what we do have to do is elevate our thinking above the maze. And let's describe the Bahamas we want in 5, 10, 15, 20, whatever amount of years, and begin to use the collective intelligence of all of us to basically harness that power to simply, what is the path that we will take? Looking back, standing in the future, looking back to where we are, and how do we get there?
Thank you. Cash, Clark, were both of you always on this path where you're now at with technology, or was there a shift at some time, and when did that happen for you? And why did it happen, you feel?
James.
I mean, did you move at the times, or?
Honestly, I would say yeah. I mean, my degree was in computer information systems. Worked in North Carolina for a while. Started off as an application developer. Went and started doing working for the networking team. Back then, we were doing like switching out token ring networks to Ethernet. Worked at NASDAQ project as an engineer for MCI WorldCom at the time, and came home. Actually, yeah, well, I did divert one part, and that was that entrepreneurial spirit. I came home, started a engraving metal tag business, was very successful, sold that off. Got kind of bored, went back into technology again, and worked at, well, that time COB, worked there for a few years, and then rented offshore bank. But for most part, I always was in technology and always tried to stay at cutting edge. Even any new business initiatives that I did, always tried to do my research to stay at the cutting edge.
Right. Cash, are you happy to be a part of this industry? Is it worth it?
Yeah, it's worth it, and I just want to speak to the young people, because everyone, they look at the after story. They don't follow it from the beginning. With me, I had a whole different business model in terms of trying to compete with custom computers, Micronet, and all those guys selling PCs and all this. And then it wasn't me. I took all my savings and say, hey, let me buy all these machines, hope that people could buy it. But that didn't work out. But what happened is I had to change on the go. And that's the thing you got to realize with business. You have to be creative in thinking. You can't. You have to be able to adapt. That's why I always recommend that whole research and development and the needs, what the economy needs, what it needs right now. And just in terms of technology, yeah, I'm proud to be a part of it and inside technology, because I always look at a downfall as an opportunity.
Right. Dr. Higgs, you're a part of Silicon Valley?
Yep.
Okay. What you see there, can you envision that being here in Grand Bahama? And what advice would you give us in being on that competitive edge? Where will we begin? With this, similar forums such as this always? Or is there another avenue that we can take?
Yeah, so I feel like a summit like this is a great start for getting on that path and continuing that. Coming out of the summit, there would need to be continuous discussions about how do we turn some of the ideas that we've discussed here into reality. How do we actually make it something that's tangible, whereby we're attracting and we're having individuals who are developing their own business ideas here within Grand Bahama and within the Bahamas. So I think it's a fabulous start for us to be having this conference and this summit, and I think it's just the beginning of what we need to continue to do.
Go ahead.
Yeah, there are two things that I want to add. The first of which, what we talked about before, would have been a little bit about taking risks, right? So we talked about technology, and believe it or not, I wasn't always in technology. When I left my graduate program, I went on to consult. And so through consulting, I remember having the conversations when I was leaving Stanford. Folks were like, why are you going into consulting? You know, PhD folks, they should be professors. And I thought, well, that might be the stereotype, but I'm interested in learning more about business. And so for me, it was that element of taking risks, right? Whereby I got the opportunity to learn more and more about what it's like to be in a business environment. And it's benefited me tremendously when I went back into technology, because I now had the business skill sets that has allowed me to contribute even more. So that's the first thing I want to point out. And then the second thing, we talked a little bit about education, right? Think about it. The kids who are in school today, they're going to be retiring basically 40, 50 years from now. What can we possibly tell them about what the world is going to look like in 50 years from now if we don't even know what the world is going to look like in 10 years, in 5 years, right? So the way that I like to think about it, and I've been having this conversation on and on, particularly with my brothers, which is we need to learn how to learn and be good at it. We need to be able to be resilient. We need to be able to be adaptive, as was mentioned. And we need to be able to seize the opportunities when they come. Gone are the days when you would go to school, you learn just a very niche trade, and then that's what you do for the rest of your life. We're in a world where it's very fast-paced. It's moving, it's evolving, and those who don't adapt the technology will be left behind. So again, I want to encourage, I see the youth, a few of you are still here, but I want to encourage them, to adopt the mindset of learning how to learn and be good at it, because that's the skill that's going to take you throughout life and help you to be successful.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the importance of ICTs.
Yeah, just what happens is, he makes a point, because the typical person in this new digital dispensation stays at a job only on an average of 5 years. And so when you go to school for any particular thing, if you don't learn how to learn, you will be left behind. And so what we have to do is we have to begin to create an environment, and we talked about the power of location or the competitive advantage. One of the things that we have is that we have an excellent relationship with our neighbors to the north. We have the geopolitical aspect of who we are. We also have the digital infrastructure that runs through us. We have the intellectual capital. And now what we have to do is we have to teach our children to think. We have to begin to tell them that it's impossible to see something that don't exist. So if they can see it in their mind, we must provide a means for them to move towards it. And so they can recognize what OPM, OPE, and OPI is. Other people efforts, other people money, and other people ideas. And that's what innovation is. It's basically be able to manage and improving upon that. And so if we begin to just say, provide the environment where we not direct them into tourism, banking, or whatever, and we can actually, and we use an example, we want to develop the Bahamas, and we say we don't have the money for consultants. Why don't we just have a prize, find $1 million, and then have a competitive thing where engineering companies or whatever around the world would submit their plans, and all of their plans become part of our intellectual capital as part of the competition. Tell us what it is to be a green island. Tell us what it is to be a digital island. Tell us what it is to transform education. And so what we do is we put that date there, and we could get millions of dollars of technological ideas as to what it is. Because these companies want to be that one company to basically say they did the Bahamas. And we can become that digital community, that digital city, that digital island, and that digital country.
I was just about to ask the question. Very good, very good. Has the time come for us, and all of you can answer this, for us to redirect our efforts? Right now we maintain that tourism is our #1 industry. We invest much into that area. Has the time come for a shift in focus with regards to our industries?
Shift in paradigm.
With regard, and maintaining or creating this competitive advantage in this area? Beginning with you, okay. I would like an answer from all of you on that.
Okay, here's the point. Tourism is not going to go away. Banking is not going to go away. Financial services is not going to go away. The problem is they're transitioning to digital. It's going to become fintech. It is going to become more one of immersion tourism where you have culture, where people come to experience you more than their location. So we should be able to say, okay, come experience the culture of the Bahamas, sun, sea, and technology. And so what happens is that culture, so we have to say, okay, what is banking moving to? Digitalization, fintech. What is a financial service? They're moving to I think someone mentioned the whole concept of a repository, where we become the database of the entire world. Data is the new currency of the 21st century. And so what we have to do is, we don't have to abandon them, we need to rethink them from a 21st century type environment and become that place where, let me understand this, where we have they say we suffer from de-risking. Why don't we just create a database? I think Mr. Moxie touched on this. We create a database where all of those repositories are put here. They don't have to even share the information with us, you know. But if the United States come to us and say, you approve this person, we say that's because you didn't put it in the database. UK, you didn't put it in the database. Yeah. And so we become that point of exchange. And so what we have to do is just imagine the possible. The Bahamas is IMP, where we say the impossible becomes, where imagination becomes possible, and it becomes a reality through the collaborative efforts.
Thank you very much. I'll go to the end. Ms. Burns.
As the lone liberal arts major on the stage, I don't think we want to scare everybody into thinking that they have to become an electric engineer or go into computer science. It's a phenomenal skill set to have. But I think, to Dr. Higgs's point, the ability to learn and assess and revive and recycle and pivot is a skill set in and of itself. I'm an English major. I told stories for 6 years on a PBS station in Florida. And I was fascinated by technology because where I grew up, power would go out for 11 weeks at a time. And we got really good at, generators and VHF radios and CD sets. So I was always about finding tools for communication. Our culture, as a Bahamian culture, is sun, sea, sand, but it's so much more.
Okay.
We are Gullah. We are Eleutherian adventurers. We've got Red Bay Andros that nobody seems to know about. We have got a completely different dialect in Ragged Island to explore. And I'm working with a group out of Discovery Channel right now that is working to site a 3-year exploration here, three-year season, studying shipwrecks that Gordon Cooper, the astronaut, saw from space during, the 1980s. These waters were that vivid. We've got oceanographers that fight to study here. There are so many ways to deploy technology to help us tell our unique stories.
Absolutely.
The Gullah Sea Island Coalition, the islands off of South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, we have so much in common with them. And obviously, it's not color specific. Right. It's about telling the stories. It's about not suggesting that our Bahamian dialect is less than. Yes. I supported Ebonics only because my Jamaican teachers on Harbor Island in the 60s taught us in patois, and they taught us in standard English, which was what I can only speak at home. But it was so that we could continue to communicate with the elders. Absolutely. And I think if we make this more holistic, that in and of itself is going to be one of our unique positions. We've got the glorious environment. We've got really smart, creative, classic people. But we have got stories on stories that we still haven't begun to tell.
Thank you very much. Kat.
Yeah. I think there should be a shift because I think you should provide the opportunity for those young people in the back there, because my daughter, she's now at Arizona State. She went to Queens College. And even though I'm a soccer, but she went to Queens College.
St. Augustine.
she went to Queens College, and she's having a warm time. I like to say warm time dealing with. She's in biomedical engineering, so that's given her a whole different outlook or onset in life, because we didn't provide the opportunity for her to venture into engineering from a young age. And the kids in the U.S., they're on a different level where they do that engineering from early onset.
Absolutely.
So I think we just need to provide the opportunity. Look at our education system. We don't just start from young. We start from 5, 6, and go straight up.
You're not too young.
But the thing is,
not from 3 months old.
Grade 5, 6, and just give them a chance to be a play in it. Because, and then technology. When you look at GDP. And in terms of providing a sustainable job, it's the way to go.
All right, Higgs, Doctor.
Sure. So tourism has been good for the economy in a lot of ways, and it's still a strong pillar of the economy. So I don't want everyone to get up and run out of the room and say, we're done with tourism. It's still going to be around, but things are going to change a little bit, or things will have to change in a little bit. When I think about technology, really, you fall into one of two camps. Either you embrace it, you love it, you run forward with it, or you get left behind. There's no one that's stuck in the middle. Either you sort of take a little bit of time to understand it. And it doesn't have to be very difficult. And what I mean by that is, even at a small fundamental level, being willing to embrace it and learn about it and engage with it, as opposed to the I don't know it, therefore I'm not going to touch it mindset, right? So being able to have that willingness to try and willingness to embrace it, and for those who actually pick it up and really run with it and do well, that creates more and more opportunity. But in general, as a culture, there has to be the willingness to adopt it.
All right, Clark?
Yeah, I definitely think tourism has sustained us for a very long time. The reality is it has to be a paradigm shift because, I mean, realistically, we say sunshine and sea. I mean, even though I think, Exuma, where I'm from, has the most beautiful beaches in the world. But now in this economy, everybody has sunshine and sea. So I think what we've went away from, and I think in Michael Johnson's presentation when he talked about the fan experience at a stadium, that's what we're missing even in tourism for a while, because persons are not going to come and take their hard-earned money if they're not going to have a good experience. If we develop this technology, help persons coming here, like Mr. Cash said earlier, to come do business, the ease of business has to be good. They have to have a good experience. When I come and set up my technology company here in Freeport, I have to have a good experience. So we need to get better as a culture selling good experiences.
All right, Adelaide?
During our earlier conversations, we heard about smart city. And at the core of it, smart city is essentially taking dumb things and giving us interaction, transitive communication with it. And what it clearly states is that technology has inserted itself into everything.
Absolutely.
It's in radio, it's in television,
Absolutely.
it's in all that we do. We hear about now LTE technology. We have to embrace it, harness it, and see how we can get it to drive it forward and see how we can move as a country.
All right, as the lady of the hour,
Well,
last
on
word.
behalf of all the entrepreneurs that we've ever worked with over the years, to Dr. Clark's point, I think a small business administration would be really helpful. I have no issue whatsoever with tourism being part of the paradigm. My biggest issue is that Bahamians rarely participate beyond middle management. And that's what needs to change. And you've got Bahamian expats around the world with means that are willing to see that sort of change. But we have to start where it doesn't take an entrepreneur 2 years to get a loan for a coconut factory at the AIC. Doesn't have to go out and buy a suit to go to Bahamas Development Bank to be taken seriously.
Right.
Because they're talking about something outside of the banking or tourism sector, as it were. So I think that making dollars available for entrepreneurs of all skill sets is not only going to buttress the digital economy, but it's really going to jumpstart tourism, because on Harbor Island, we have 4 Bahamian-owned resorts. I kind of took it for granted growing up. Heads and beds in the out islands is a very different concept. It's more of a service economy in Nassau and Freeport, and I think the attitudes reflect it. And it's too bad, because we are not made to just be a service economy. I mean, I went to training college. It was a fantastic experience. We all had to do the hotel tourism, familiarization course. But that's a start to your career. It can't be the be and end all.
Thank you very much. Wrapping up, finally, one word. One word. We're wrapping up. One word as we aim to create a competitive advantage. What is the watchword for the next year? One word from each of you. One word as we go towards creating a competitive advantage in the next year.
Diplomacy.
Diplomacy. We'll come back to you.
Yes, give me. I come back.
C. Allen.
Imagination.
Imagination.
Passion.
Passion.
Possibilities.
Possibilities.
Strategies.
Strategy.
Foster.
Foster.
Yeah.
All righty. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much, all of you.
I didn't mean to push you into it. I would have waited.
And I appreciate it. Thank you for allowing me to facilitate this session. I now turn the mic over to Madam President, Senator Kay Smith.
Can we?
So you live in
Thank you, Pakisha, and thank you, panelists. What a wonderful afternoon. Thank you very much.
Shall we?
Thank you very much again.
That was lovely.
Now, we're a little bit ahead of ourselves only because a lot of people have asked for the presenters to all come back on the stage at the end for a good 15, 20 minutes, so you all have the opportunity to ask some questions and to really just say whatever you'd like to say as an audience. You sat here all day. We want to hear from you as well. So for all of the presenters, please don't go away. I do intend to call you back. So thank you again. Our final discussion today will be the ICT industry as a career. Ladies and gentlemen, we are definitely nearing the end of day one. It has truly been a spectacular day. Our keynote presentation this afternoon comes to us from Google, something we do every day for all manner of information. I know when my kids, 2 of them are in college now, and they always send me a WhatsApp and ask me a question. I say, man, Google that, man, Google that. He is charged with developing and executing a global diversity innovation strategy to recruit salespeople for one of Google's digital advertising sales organizations. He co-founded the nonprofit Technology for Families in Need, Inc., aimed at closing the digital divide for low-income families. Please welcome, and I hope I pronounce your name right, Shaden Delaveau to the stage.
Thank you for that amazing introduction. Thank you. And I appreciate it. Good afternoon. See, I'm ecstatic to be here, but I'm a little bit scared because I've learned some lessons in my life. And one of the lessons that I learned in life is that the hardest time to present is after lunch. Especially when you have lunch in the Caribbean, right? Because you have that delicious food, it goes down nice and good. And then you come back to the room and you sit down and the eyes start to get a little heavy. And if you're like me, the hands go down to the belly and you lean back just a little bit. So, to counteract that effect, I'm going to ask you to do something. And you've been doing it all day, so it's not going to be that unfamiliar. But I'm going to ask you for a round of applause. Wait. You didn't even know what you're clapping for. I love that, though. You clap? Absolutely. I love it. Thank you for that energy. We're going to need that in a little bit. A round of applause, one, to Senator Thompson for having this vision and this dream a few short months ago, and then 2, to everyone that worked with him to actually bring it together in such a short period of time, because that is truly, truly amazing. So a round of applause for that. Secondly, I'm going to ask you for another round of applause. Not yet, Miss. I know you. I'm watching you. This second round of applause is because we've been talking a lot about technology, and technology is really about not just now, but of course the future. And in that respect, I would be remiss if I did not recognize the fact that there are a group of students who have been here engaged all day, soaking it up. So wait. I love y'all are ready to applaud, and I love that. Here's what I want, though, because we're talking about our youth, right? So we can't just give them any old regular type of applause. When you applaud for them, I want you to bring your hands together as if each decibel of applause represents $1 going into your bank account. All right? Now you're involved. Now you're engaged. Now I see you. Give it up. And what I love is some of the students were over there clapping the hardest, like, hey, bring them dollars, bring those dollars. So, as our lovely president said, my name is Shadon Delaveau, actually. Shadon is Persian for happy one. And I will be forever grateful to Google because I did not know that. My mother did not know that when she named me. It just happened to work out all right, which I found out through Google when I decided one day, let me Google Shadon just in case. Now, parents, I encourage you, now that Google exists, see, my mom had an excuse. There was no Google 30-something years ago. Now that Google exists, parents, please Google your children's names. Because what if Shadon meant skinny one? Now my whole life is just ironic. And who wants to walk around as a walking irony? Not me. I am from the city of Boston originally, grew up in Boston, Massachusetts. And one of the things I learned while doing this presentation is that when you work for a large company, one of their biggest fears is being sued. And so as I was putting together my slides of my history and my work experience and things like that, I had all these great images and brand logos because I've worked with some pretty familiar companies. And I brought it together and then submitted it for legal review, and they're like, did you ask this company if you could use their logo? Did you ask this company if you could use their brand? And I said, well, no. And they're like, well, you can't use it then. So I had to get creative. And so this is the legal department approved slide of my professional life. I started off in the consumer products industry working for Ralston Purina. Selling dog food, cat chow, dog chow, etc. Right? So that's the bowl of dog food. That's what that represents. After Ralston Purina, I went to Colgate-Palmolive. Colgate-Palmolive, #1 oral care company in the world, where I did category management. And that's what the toothbrush and the toothpaste represents. I examined my life a little bit, and Colgate and Purina were great companies. But something was missing. I needed a bit more excitement and passion in my day-to-day. And so I had the idea to go back to school and get my MBA. So I went to Columbia University, got my Master's of Business Administration. And you may notice, this picture's not me. This is, two women who seem to be happy graduating. I have no idea who they are. But again, this is the legal approved representation of my Columbia graduation. It was an ecstatic time. And then I left Columbia and went to work for the #1 beauty company in the world, L'Oreal, where I spent 10 years in various functions. So first in marketing, then in business development, and then later on doing some recruitment before moving back over to their sales world. I lived in New York City for the last 14 years, up until very recently. And at some point, you're probably wondering, why is he showing us so many pictures? Is this a presentation or a photo book? But what you'll soon realize is that I like to consider myself a jack of all trades, master of not many. And I like to take photographs. But I haven't figured out a way to get people to pay to see my pictures yet. And so what I like to do is wait until I have a captive audience. Thank you very much for participating. And show my photos. So I took this photo of New York City, which is why legal allowed me to use it. More specifically, I lived in Brooklyn, New York. Yes, I did take this photo as well. Thank you very much. And most recently, when I came to work for my company, I relocated to the Bay Area, San Francisco, California. Now, you may notice with this particular image, it looks like it was taken from a helicopter kind of zooming over the bridge. I do not have a helicopter. I did not take this photo. But I got it from a free photo source. And I figured I would go through that trouble because it was better than just showing you this. All right. That's enough about me. let's talk about careers in tech. Now, if you're like me, and many of you are, I realize that we've been talking about tech since this morning and kind of taken it for granted a bit that you see it as being a good thing or an industry that's exciting or something to be in. But there are many people here who may not be there yet. Some of the students, for example, may say, well, you know, why am I here? My teacher told me I had to come, but I don't really understand why. And so for you people, for you folks who don't have a tech background, who haven't been programming since day one and things like that, I'd like to spend a little bit of time talking why. Why technology? Tech is growing. So I'd like to share some data with you from the US Bureau of Labor Statistics that over the next 10 years, employment for computer and information technologies is projected to grow 13%. It's actually 30% for software engineers. The numbers were updated recently. That's compared to 7% for the rest of the economy in all other forms of employment. During the Great Recession that happened a few years ago, back in 2008, 9-ish, when the housing market crashed, the tech sector lost about 64,000 jobs. That's compared to the general economy in the US losing about 7.6 million. When you think about that number, it's almost too large to even fully grasp, so I wanted to put it in perspective a bit. This is what it looks like when you take a look at jobs lost in the economy overall versus the tech sector specifically. Tech has a certain resilience, a certain stickiness. Oh, thank you. Apparently, I'm sweating. Thank you very much. That makes it incredibly attractive. Tech can be lucrative. So, and by the way you all just applauded for those decibels and dollars in your bank account, this is something that will absolutely resonate. But when you take a look at the average salary, the average median salary, compared to the average tech salary, you'll notice the drastic difference. Tech is interesting. I said, this was my life before. Dog food and toothpaste. Now, when you look at any sector that you're interested in, whether you're interested in cars, gaming, media, entertainment, news, or even something as simple as having a cup of coffee, because we all know that no cup of coffee is complete without a handheld device, a tablet, a phone, or something in hand. Tech is ubiquitous. Contrary to popular belief, tech is also accessible. And this, for me, is of supreme importance, because for many of us who were not previously in tech, when we think about making that transition into the industry, it seems like it can require amazing feats of endurance, strength, and durability. Because we look at our skill set, our core skill set, and we look at the tech industry, and we say that I don't fit in there. What would I do? Am I going to have to go back to school? Am I going to have to get a PhD in something? How do I make that happen? But I'd like to tell you, no, that's not the case. Yes, absolutely. There are some technical roles in tech. Whether we're talking about software engineers, who essentially program things, machines, systems, whether we're talking about computer and research scientists, we're talking about computer network architects, information security analysts. We heard a lot about security earlier. There are some incredibly technical roles in tech that do require a lot of education, a lot of schooling. But on the other hand, there are other roles. Some very traditional roles. Roles like sales. So I want you to think about this. For every tech company you can imagine, once they create this product that they have, it requires that they have people to sell it. Right? They're not just building it for themselves, they're building it for some customer. So they need those people to bring it to their customers. So in the tech industry, we have salespeople. You know what they do? They sell things. We have program managers. right? Someone explained it earlier. They have products that come together. That essentially, these are the folks who go around and they talk to the different teams and they keep everything on track and in line and they make sure to move things forward. You know what they do? They manage programs. We have project managers. I'm gonna let you guess what they do. Absolutely. They manage projects. Thank you very much for the participation. Customer service. You know? They assist customers. We have finance. I'll be honest, I don't really know what finance is. Do they finance things? I don't. But when you think about it like that, from that perspective, that you have very traditional roles that can simply be viewed from a bit of a tech lens. Do you see how it goes a little bit from being like this to being like this? Where you just take your core skill set, whether you're a salesperson, a finance person, whether you've done marketing before, and understand what the tech perspective of that would be and acquire those skills to then make that transition from your current industry into the tech industry? All right, so what's next? You guys are saying, Shadon, you know what? You're right. It's lucrative. It's interesting. Oh, wait. I know how to do some of those things you were talking about. What's next? Well, how? How do I do it? So the first step is to really do your homework. Students, I remember when I was in school, my parents would always say, listen, go do your homework. Every day after school, go do your homework, go do your homework. And I thought, man, I can't wait until I finish school so I don't have to hear, go do your homework anymore. Not one more time. Well, listen, you're going to hear do your homework for the rest of your life. You're just going to have different homework as you get older and as you go into different careers and things like that. But if you ever stop learning, that's the day you start dying. So never stop learning. Do your homework. Sorry, this clicker is kind of jumpy. I think the clicker's tired, so I just want to get to the end of the day. Here are some of the players in tech, right? So you think of the Apples, the Samsungs, the Amazons, the Googles, Microsofts, Facebooks, Netflix. And what I put up here is what they sell, right? Because if you understand a company's product and how they make money, then you understand what's important to them. And you can also understand what are the skills that you need to acquire to make you attractive to that particular company. So for example, Google sells ads, right? They use a system, a software platform called AdWords, all right? You have the opportunity to actually go online and get certified in AdWords. For free, no cost, right? And does it become clear how if you're already a salesperson and you have that core set of sales skills, how becoming certified in a product that this company cares about, how that could be attractive to that company and make you more attractive overall as a potential candidate? Hopefully, right? And you say, but Shadon, how do I do that? I don't want to go back to school. So I went and I Googled free online classes and literally got 429 million results. Now, they're probably not all useful results, but I did it as an example just to show that there are countless online resources that are free to you to learn some of the skills that you would need to be able to be successful within this industry. Are you all still with me? Getting a little quiet. Are you fading back again? Going? Do we need some more applause? Is that what's going on? I love it. I love the energy. Thank you, students, for supporting me. The other thing that's important to remember is that tech is bigger than a few large companies. So certain companies come to mind automatically and immediately when you talk about the industry. But there are countless others. I've seen numbers of saying that there are 100,000 tech companies in the US alone. All right? So when you're thinking about careers in tech, don't just limit yourself. Don't just say, hey, how do I get into a Google? How do I get into a Facebook? Because it's possible, absolutely. But I'll give you an example of that. Last year, Google's a company of about 75,000 people. And last year, Google got about 3 million applications. All right? 75,000, 3 million. I use that illustration because if you limit yourself to the top 0.1% of companies, you limit your chances automatically. A better way, and a much better way to approach it, is to say, how can I get into this industry? How can I develop the skills that this industry finds attractive? And then how can I pivot once I get in? I'll give you an example. I had no tech background beforehand, right? I had marketing, I had sales, I'd done some HR stuff. But what I decided to do was create a presence for myself online. And I started small. I started by writing a blog on professional development. I still have it. It's called The Ultimate Guide to Not Screwing Up Your Career. A lot of it's from personal experience. And I started this blog and I said, listen, I learned these life lessons and honestly, I'm very passionate about our youth and I don't want them to learn the same hard way that I learned when it comes to some of these lessons. So I created this blog. That then led to other opportunities where a friend of mine approached me and said, oh wait, hey, you have this blog. You know what? I'm working on an article for Ebony Magazine. I'd love to feature some of the advice from your blog. So, well, wait a minute. Okay. Absolutely. Who wouldn't want to be in Ebony Magazine? I grew up reading it. Something I could show my mom, right? Because everything comes down to impressing your mom at the end of the day. Wrote this article and, she picked up pieces from Ebony, did that a few more times. And after I did that, I had, kind of a decent amount of content, right? I had the blog, I had the pieces in Ebony. And then another friend called me and said, hey, listen, I've seen that you've been writing about professional development. I actually have a friend at Fortune who is looking for someone to write about professional development. I said, whoa, wait a minute, okay. And then I started writing for Fortune. And so if you go to fortune.com, I'm on there, I have a bunch of articles. And all of a sudden one day I get a phone call. And I'm like, hello? I'm like, who's this? And they're like, hey, Shadon. They knew my name, which was scary. I'm like, oh, yeah, this is Shadon. Who's this? They're like, it's Google. Like, Google? How'd you get my number, Google? And they said, hey, look, we have a job we think you may be interested in. Why don't you come out and interview? I said, well, I wasn't really thinking about moving to the West Coast or working in the technology industry, but sure, why not? It's Google. I'll take the call. I Google things. And I flew out, and I'll never forget this. I'll never forget this because I flew out. Now, you have to have this imagery in mind. At the time, I'm literally working in Midtown Manhattan, right? Fifth Avenue, Rockefeller Center. I'm literally right there. And if you've ever visited New York and been in Midtown, I mean, the city is just nonstop, moving. If you get to Manhattan and try to look up at a building, someone is going to run you over on their way to the next meeting. And so for me, I was like, all right, that was my mindset. Listen, you're there, you're grinding, you're moving. No time for anything. There's work to do, meetings to be had, people to see, drinks to drink. So I get out to Google and I interview. And it was lunchtime. It was probably September. So New York had just started to get a little bit cold. And I'm in California, and at first I get there, and everyone's in short sleeves and shorts. And I'm like, oh, wow, wait a minute. Okay, this could be interesting. I interview, and we're walking to lunch. And believe it or not, this is when this mind shift happened. All up until this point, during my first set of interviews, I'm like, you know what, even if they offer me this job, there's no way I'm moving to California. I'm from the Northeast, like I said, born and raised in Boston, my family's there. Throughout the interview process, this is the thought going through my head. And I'm walking across the campus and I look over And it's about 1 o'clock in the afternoon on a Tuesday, and people are playing volleyball. I was like, whoa. Then I look at people playing basketball, and people are outside laughing, eating and laughing. And that seems like a small thing, but coming from the industry that I came from, if you ate, you were eating at your desk. And there was probably very little laughing involved because there's no time to laugh. And so for me, it was like, wow, this sector is different. This industry is different. There's something special about this place, and people seem genuinely happy to be here. And so for me, that immediately changed my frame of reference and how I was thinking. So a study was done that asked people, how did you secure your most recent job, your most recent employment? And I wanted to show you this because you'll see that 40% talk about either word of mouth, direct approach from an employer or recruiter, employee referral, or social media site. All those things really say the same thing to me. You have to be a part of the conversation. You have to know what's going on. You don't get to hear about jobs word of mouth if you don't know anybody in the industry, right? You're not finding your job on a social media site if you're not on professional social media sites. You're not being referred by an employee if you don't know any employees. So how do you do that? You create your corporate network at an organization, in an industry, before you even interview. There are amazing tools that exist, and primarily the number one among them, I'd say, is LinkedIn. If you're not on LinkedIn, you are doing yourself a disservice. Because like I said, 3 million people applied to Google. I didn't apply. They found me on LinkedIn. When you create your professional identity online, instead of you, handing out resumes, you are leveraging the power of technology to bring people to you. And so, if you remember anything today, take this away. Make sure your LinkedIn page is phenomenal. And if you don't know how to do that, it's great. You can Google it. No, I'm joking. Well, you can, but for me, I don't believe in reinventing the wheel. Take a look, go onto a social media site and take a look around and see someone that's doing what you want to do, and then do everything you can to get your LinkedIn to mirror theirs, right? You don't have to start at square one for things. And I feel like that was a lesson that I had to learn for technology, that there's usually an easier way to do things than starting from scratch. All right, so time for a change. I have this metaphorically, but also to shift gears a bit, because some of you may be looking for a change, right? But I want to shift topics just slightly to talk about the benefits of the industry, to talk about very tactically, what do you do to get in there, right? I want to talk about interviewing just a little bit. Because some of you may be at a place where you're like, you know what, I'm ready for a change, I'm ready to start doing this. Shadon, help me out, throw me some bones. Very tactically, what do I need to do? Get my LinkedIn together, got it. What about when the company calls? What happens then? All right? So basically, interviews are supreme importance because it's a company's attempt to get to know you, right? What you have the ability to do does not matter if you can't communicate it properly to people. You could be the most talented person in the world. If you don't know how to tell people what you have the ability to do, it'll get you nowhere. So, when you're going into interviews, think about what employees are looking for, employers are looking for. Leadership, number one. Achievement, goal orientation. The ability to deal with pressure, especially when you start to think about the tech industry. Because think about what this industry is. I was talking to someone and they said, you know what, most industries, when they come about, there's like one major wave of change in that industry, and that's kind of it for the industry. In tech, that happens all the time. There are disruptors all the time. And so companies are really looking for people who can come in and thrive in that environment. People who can come and lead in ambiguity. People who are going to come in and continue to learn. People who can handle pressure and still achieve goals. You're going to get general questions. Tell me about yourself. Walk me through your resume. Here's a little tip. These aren't just like whatever. Like these are real questions to see how you process information. So, and I'll give you one other example. I hadn't interviewed in a while. I was with L'Oreal for about 10 years and interviewed with a company, sat down with the recruiter, and the recruiter said, hey, all right, so tell me about yourself. I said, oh, well, you know, I'm firstborn of 5 children, originally from Boston. And looking back, I'm like, why would I say that? The recruiter doesn't care, right? That I'm from Boston, that I have 4 sisters, you know, all this other irrelevant information. It was more so, this question here is an opportunity that says, tell me why, as an organization, your skills are aligned to what we're looking for, right? So view it through that lens. Because if I had viewed it through that lens, I'd say, oh yeah, I'm passionate about technology. You know, I've had experience across multiple functional areas and all these things to let this recruiter know, if you don't hire me, you're crazy, right? View it through that lens. So it's one of those things where for an untrained recruiter, they can be looking at the wrong things, right? Are you wearing the right clothes? Do you have the proper amount of confidence? What's your handshake like? Are you prepared? Do you know about the company? And so you have to be prepared for those things. You know, go in looking the part, understand that, understand what the company values. But just know, some untrained interviewers, they're going to make snap judgments. They're going to assess likability. So if you come in and you seem like you're not pleasant, well, you know, it might not work out. Some of them are going to decide on gut instinct. Some of them may try to make you feel uncomfortable on purpose just to see how you handle pressure, right? We don't think that that's an effective way to interview, but that's what some people do. Trained interviewers, on the other hand, are going to ask you more experiential biographical questions. Tell me about a time when you had to do X, Y, Z. They're going to hold back judgment and seek evidence. And here, they're going to probe. They're going to probe. They're going to probe. What does that mean? What does that mean? Well, they're really going to take your skills, your experience, your competencies, and put that all together to see how are you going to perform once you get into this organization. They're going to walk you through this funnel, right? Tell me about a time when you had to do X, and then you'll tell them. And then they'll say, all right, so why did you do what you did? And then you'll tell them. And they'll say, all right, well, how did it work out for you? And then you'll tell them. And then they'll say, well, if you had to do it again differently, what would you do? Because they want to see if you have the ability to, one, clearly communicate information. 2, logically think through problems and solutions. 3, be self-reflective enough to know if something is working or not and adjust on the fly. And then 4, take away lessons to apply it so that you can scale and create efficiencies for your next problem. Preparation is always going to be your best weapon. Again, it's like doing your homework. So know the company, know the culture. What are the buzzwords? What do they care about? What's their product? You know, how do they work? Are they networked, matrixed, whatever? Know the process. How are you going to interview? Particularly in this sector, your first interviews may not be face-to-face. They may be video conference. They may be phone, teleconference, whatever. Are you interviewing with one person, multiple people? Is it a panel? All of these things are important because they help you to prepare differently. Again, know the interviewer. Prepare your examples. You know you're going to be asked about leadership. about problem solving, about how you handle pressure, how you multitask, how you achieve stretch goals. These are things that 9 out of 10 companies are going to talk to you about. If you go into an interview and they say, tell me your strengths and weaknesses, and you have to think about it, you have failed. Right? You should know this going in. Prepare this beforehand. A framework that I like is STARE. Right? S-T-A-R-E. When someone asks you a question, hey, tell me about a time when you had to do this, tell them the situation. Here's what I did. Or, excuse me, here's what was going on. Here was the challenge, the problem. Here's the tasks that I did. The action around those tasks. Here's the result. Here's what happened. And then evaluate. Here's what I learned. If you break that down, it tends to keep you on track as you're answering various questions. And if you think about it beforehand, it'll help you pull your story together in a way that's more concise. So I always like to provide some tips, but recall some recent examples, right? So the more closely your examples align to their business needs and their business situations, the better off you'll be. Be concise. You know, a lot of times we like to hear ourselves speak, and people tend to speak more when they get nervous, right? Make sure that your examples are boom, 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 because then that gives the appearance and lets the interviewer know that you have clarity of thought. Be specific. Don't generalize. One time I had to grow revenue by 8%. We were under-resourced. Here's what happened. Here's what I did. All right? Don't just say one time I had to grow sales and I did it and it was great. Because as an interviewer, that doesn't give them any information about you and how you problem solve. What do you need to know before? What the company does, what do they care about? What's their interview process? During, what does the interviewer care about? And that's going to depend on who's interviewing you. So if they're an HR person, they're probably trying to assess if you fit into the culture. If they're a business person, they're probably trying to assess if you have the functional knowledge to do the job. And that's why that preparation is key. Know who you're interviewing with beforehand. All right, as a recap, an obsession with preparation. Utilize all available resources. Understand the objectives of the interviewer. Know what's really important to the company. And a lot of that is going to revolve around how they make their money. Be incredibly self-aware. And then frame yourself as a seamless integration into the role, into the company. If I don't have to use my imagination to figure out how you fit in, you have a higher chance of getting the job. And then STARE as a framework. So before I leave, I want you to remember just a couple of things. Earlier, a lot of people were talking about imagination. So Ken asked you to imagine a Grand Bahama where certain things were possible because of blockchain. Xerxes imagined being a magician and creating something from nothing, which he did. Senator Thompson imagined a conference with 500 people with representation from Silicon Valley. But I'm going to ask you to imagine one more thing. A poor woman grows up on the island of Andros. As a little girl, no running water. The kitchen floor is made of sand. So every day before school, she goes down to the beach to get fresh sand for the kitchen floor. She goes to school and has good grades, first grade, second grade, third grade. But by the time she gets to the 8th grade, she has to drop out because she has to help her family to earn more money. So she never finishes high school, let alone college. She grows up a bit and moves to the United States. She raises her family, her children. Her children have children. She raises them too. And fast forward, 40 years later, her grandson gets to stand on stage in Grand Bahama and talk about careers in technology. So when we talk about imagination, the reason I show this picture is because the road of opportunity ends the same place your imagination does. And finally, especially in tech, your success is forged in the crucible of your failures. So don't ever quit. And just to make the lawyers happy, I'll attribute this quote. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shadon. I won't call you Shadon or whatever I said before. Thank you very much. We really need to hear from you in the audience, and what I'd like to do is ask all the presenters to come back on the stage. Can I have a few more chairs just in the front of the stage? If the protocol persons could bring some chairs right in the front. Just quickly, any empty chair. But can I ask all the presenters who presented today to take the stage again for us, please? We just want to allow the audience, this is only going to take about 15 minutes, we just want to allow the audience to ask questions, and certainly for the audience to say whatever's on your mind. Ask the presenters. They've come a long way. They're such a great group of people. We need to take advantage of, not all day, everybody who presented today, everybody. Up, up, up. Thank you. I'm not sure if we need any more chairs, but certainly if we do, they're right here. I think there's some roving mics, cordless mics in the audience as well. Anybody interested in asking a question? Can you get up? And technical people, we need a microphone on this side of the room, please. They seem to have enough now, I think. Bring the chair. Yeah, put your chair in the middle. I think that's enough. Yeah, thank you. Okay, Tammy, let it rip.
Good afternoon, everybody. I am so pleased to be here today. It was definitely a wonderful day for me. I'm actually in the field of disaster management for the Bahamas. I work for the National Emergency Management Agency, and I'm hearing all of the talks. Everything is wonderful, but there's often talks about disaster management in terms of knowing what we've been through, how we're going to mitigate it, how we're tracking it, and how, anybody on the panelists, how do you see that in terms of trying to make sure that the Bahamas, given the fact that this particular island has been hit with so many previous storms, how do you see we going through trying to ensure that we can decrease the level of damage somewhat? We can track what's been happening from the shorelines, the intercities, the government structures in our entire process. This is a concern for me because I see so many wonderful things happening, but I often don't hear people talking about what are the disaster management plans for the country.
Oh, Kimberly, I guess it's you.
I'm glad you asked that question. I think that as technology takes front center, we're going to see more opportunities for qualified vendors. What we saw with Acklins and Inagua and Crooked Island in the aftermath of both Joaquin and Matthew is that Minister Glennis Martin was left high and dry because the lone vendor for Iridium satellite telecommunications, which is the vendor for the country, had outfitted Central Island administrators with consumer quality phones. The Bahamas Defense Force had been issued consumer quality phones. There are police quality that withstand storm issues. They come equipped with solar backup batteries. And the issue we've seen with a lot of storm damage to date has been largely communication-centric. It took 2 weeks after Hurricane Andrew in 1992 for Nassau to figure out that half of Harbor Island had not sunken under the sea. We had a twilight bark of the British Marines out in the Atlantic, a guy on a boat in Nassau Harbor on a Prodigy account. Now, mind you, in the Out Islands we're creative, and we've had ham radios, forever. We're fine with CB sets. We're fine with what we call the coconut telegraph. But Nassau and Freeport and Abaco are largely considered first world cities, and I think you need to make sure that you're prepared in the first place, because the biggest issue with any storm relief is understanding what needs to be sent in. Spanish Wells is a really good example. We had fleets of boats that were going back and forth from North Eleuthera into Nassau to get supplies, but they were also the coconut telegraph telling Nassau what needed to be sent. So I think communications are going to be key. And again, stressing the need for vendors who actually know their market.
Thank you very much. Any other questions?
Can I say something to that?
Sure, go ahead.
We live in the age of information, data. We can actually know our past, anticipate our future. And there's something called 7 Ps, because technology solves a lot of the things that we have. Even in the Arab Spring, they took down the internet, and technology allowed them to communicate across the structure. And so what we have to do is we have to understand the structure. But the most powerful thing about where we live, we're not going to change, not climate-wise or even hurricane-wise. And the 7 Ps, proper, prior, preparation, prevents poor performances.
Well, that's C. Alan Johnson. He rhyming all day. Go ahead from the audience.
Yeah, good afternoon. My name is Hilvin Cash. I'm enjoying the summit. My question I want to pose to the panelists that this can be, anyone can give their opinions. In a situation like Grand Bahama, I don't want to say Bahamas because some places in the Bahamas too are acceptable, but in Grand Bahama, we have an issue where people are less susceptible to technology. They don't want to change with the times. If you are placed in a position where you want to introduce a piece of technology or a device that can make a particular industry better, I don't want to go into details because my pitch is coming up next, but where you can introduce a device to make things better or make life a lot easier, but people are saying, okay, we're not ready for this yet, or they don't want to change. How would you persuade them to make this change or this adjustment to make their business more efficient and more tech savvy?
I'll take that one first. One of the things, whenever you're developing innovative products, there's actually a book out there by Jeffrey Moore called Crossing the Chasm. How many people have heard of that book? Jeffrey Moore describes this whole methodology of product adoption from a technology standpoint. You have what's called the early adopters or the innovators, early adopters. Then you have what's called the valley of death. Then you approach what's called the early majority, late majority, then the laggers. One of the things you have to understand as somebody who's introducing new technology into a market is that you have to develop a product in stages, and you have to recognize what stage you are relevant to the market and the market adoption. And so you have to understand what the innovators want in that product and what you have to deliver, what the early adopters want, and then you have to be able to cross that chasm. And that's where a lot of businesses actually fail, because they assume that the early adopters and the innovators want the same thing as the early majority and the laggers. And what you have to recognize as a technologist or a technology development company is that don't fool yourself and think that you're going to make a huge market push with a product that only appeals to those folks on the left side of that curve. So now what it requires you to do as a technologist or an innovator to really understand where the majority of your market is and to be able to deliver a product to that market. And I can guarantee you, if you have a new technology, you have to understand, you have to introduce products that solve problems. People don't buy technology, they buy things that allow them to solve a problem. And once you recognize what that market wants and what problems you're solving, and that market is large enough, then you have the opportunity to be successful. So keep that in mind. So if you're frustrated that things aren't growing, you might be on the left side of the valley of death. And you need to understand, how do you get across the chasm?
Thank you very much. We'd like to hear from some of the students in the room. Good.
Good afternoon. My name is Anthony Toussaint, aka Mr. Triple Dot. I have my own YouTube channel. I do music. Shameless plug in here. You can find that at Mr. Triple Dot XP. But what was brought up today, there was something that I was interested that was brought up today, talking about adaptability. You gotta learn to like learning. What I've noticed growing up in school, what really irritated me as a student was the fact that I couldn't choose what I learned. It was always given to me. And if it's always given to me, if I'm being force-fed information that I don't want or that I'm not interested in, I am going to develop this habit where I don't like learning. And what I want to ask is that, because I don't know if it's going to be brought up tomorrow or anything, but what I do want to ask is, where do you all plan on developing the school system? Because, like you said, we are trying to govern a country with outdated policies and such, but we are also trying to teach students with school systems that were developed years ago. So where do you plan to develop our school system?
That sounds like a Crazy Thompson answer. I mean, am I right?
I can comment a little bit on that. I agree with you. We do have to meet students where they are. And the educational system in the Bahamas certainly has to change with that paradigm shift. I had an opportunity to talk to Dr. Johnson a couple weeks ago when I spent some time in Exuma. And she mentioned that I think Alive has an innovation center that they're starting over at the University of the Bahamas, or BTC, one of the telecom companies. I think someone just corrected me. It's Alive. I was right. Starting the innovation center. I think that's a step in the right direction. I also think with the advent of Khan Academy, and someone joked to saying, I think it was you, President, you said Google that. Similarly, I think you do have tools that you can go ahead and like explore and learn on your own. To the comment around you being like someone's forcing information down your throat and you're not really interested or appreciative of the information that you are being subjected to, I can tell you, I think everyone on this panel would agree that we've been in a situation just like you, and 20 years later we appreciate someone forcing that information down our throat. And the last thing I would say is, I was talking to Zerks last night. Reading is fundamental, and I remember growing up that we had door written on door. Kitchen had, everything had a label, essentially. I would close the bathroom door or I would brush my teeth and my times tables were there. But 15 years later, I was an electrical engineer. And so that type of reinforcement and making sure that education is priority, trust me, it is your way out of a paper bag.
I have a quick comment about being forced to learn things that you don't like. First year of university, I took a math course, and the subject was fast Fourier transforms. And essentially, some wild, crazy Frenchman thought that he would draw all these graphs and start subtracting cosine waves from them, and just to see what happens. And that's called a fast Fourier transform. And I thought, what the hell? I mean, I am never going to use this. Fast forward, I was working for a General Dynamics company in military weaponry. We had to find Soviet subs in the Baltic Sea. Every time the sub turned, there was a 30 hertz signal for the rudder. How do you find it? You drop a microphone into the water and you do fast Fourier transforms. But even better than that, I have a second story of fast Fourier transforms, because in May of this year, Formula One, Mercedes, and Tata Communications issued a connectivity challenge. There's one of the presenters here who said, let's have a connectivity challenge and pay them $1 million, and then we own all the ideas. Formula One had one of those. And I thought, I can win money. I know stuff. And it was an IoT internet connectivity challenge, but I told them that the internet was not fast enough for Formula One. What they had to do is put all of these sensors on a radio wave. They can take the radio wave, use fast Fourier transforms to get all of the data back. The good news is I'm flying to Abu Dhabi on November the 20th to pick up my check.
Can I just hear from Gadrin Higgs, since you already had something?
Absolutely. So you mentioned that okay, so first of all, the educational system as it is, I think faces its challenges all over the world, right? But what I would want to say, and it's a slow-moving process, so don't expect rapid change there. I think that's a fair statement. But what I do want to say is that there's a lot of learning that you can do sort of on your own, right? As someone mentioned, reading. You're already connected to the internet and YouTube. So, I mean, YouTube is amazing. They upload over, I think it's 400 hours of content every minute. It's just absolutely ridiculous. But you have access to Khan Academy, all these online learning platforms where you can learn the things that you want to learn. I have a story about learning some things even in grad school that was very difficult for me, and it's not a fast Fourier transform, although I did take that class that you're talking about, and it wasn't fun. But you think that's tough? In my grad program, I did a quantum mechanics, and trust me, what you're learning right now, enjoy it, because when you get to a program like that, you can't tell the dean of the university, I'm not interested in your quantum mechanics program if it's on the course, right? So take it for what it's worth. And I would love to tell you that, quantum mechanics, my last name Higgs, physics, it's all connected to the Higgs boson, but it's not true. I don't have that type of a story to share, but just going through the experience really teaches you a few things, one of which is just discipline. Discipline is super important, so even though you may think that what you're learning right now, you may never use again, you never know, because the future can behold anything. Try to look at it as an opportunity for you to connect with other individuals who are learning the same thing. Build networks of individuals. Learn how to do things that you haven't done before. Try to stretch your mind. Try to think creatively. Try to think collaboratively. Don't just fixate on what you don't like about it. Try to spend time thinking about what you do like about it, and that'll be a tremendous asset to you in the future.
30 seconds.
You can go ahead, Siala.
Yes, sir.
You can bring that down.
On a policy recommendation, I would suggest that the government consider a policy of school choice, or some hybrid there is, that allow the private sectors or individuals to create the learning environment for students can go to targeted magnet school or whatever it is that they particularly want, and it goes on demand, and just consider some variation of that.
Thank you. Shadon?
Sure, and I don't want to be a dead horse, but your question resonates with me, and it's one of the reasons why I started, again, the blog about not screwing up your career. So, unlike the esteemed folks on the far left, I was not quantitatively inclined at all. I mean, like negative, right? Negative inversion on that, right? To the point where I actually exploited a loophole in my college curriculum that allowed me to graduate from college without taking math, right? It was amazing. It was amazing, right? There was a natural science requirement, and I figured out, oh wait, so I could take math or I could take astronomy, right? And at the time, I hated math so much that I thought, let me just take astronomy and I'll never have to deal with math again, right? And it worked great until maybe about 4 years later when I was going to business school. Because in business school, to get my MBA, that first semester, I had to take statistics, accounting, economics. It was statistics, economics, accounting, and something else, all at the same time, right? And for everyone else, it was somewhat of a review because they had taken math in college. Whereas for me, I'm burning the midnight oil learning statistics, accounting, and finance all at the same time. And it brought in that old saying that, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. If I had just been courageous enough to fight through it earlier on, it would have made my life much easier later on. So don't do like I did. If you need any tips, again, ultimate guide to not screwing up your career, because there's great opportunities for folks who aren't afraid. And to the point that was made, there are so many things that I was forced to learn later on that I'm so thankful somebody forced me, because if I had my pick, I would not have taken the time. But now, just being able to combine all of those skills and that baseline of knowledge that wasn't interesting to learn but is necessary to build on it to really reach those next levels, I'm super thankful.
Thank you. Any other questions from the audience?
Yes, I have a question.
Okay, let's go back to the right of the room. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much. John Bain. I just want to say thank you very much, Dr. Moxie, for the revision of Rogers' theory of the diffusion of innovation about the laggards and the early adopters, etc. The point I'm making is very similar to that. Freeport has always had, and I put in quotations, potential. Everybody always knew, Freeport will, because the forefathers of Freeport were visionaries. They were able to build infrastructure that took us years ahead of when they built it. So Freeport always had this thing, it's going to happen soon. So when we talk now about the new Freeport, the technology center, to me it's the same thing. Freeport always was gone. They was gone, but it never happens. So talking about the diffusion of innovation. So the innovators, us here, we want Freeport to be a technology hub. Yeah? You said that we got to be able to sell this idea to go beyond the curve, whereby the early adopters like it, the early adopters, and then it goes over the curve with the late adopters and the laggards, etc. So we got to go beyond the curve. What can we do to try to minimize our chance or our risk of failure in terms of making Freeport get it? Because even though we want it as innovators, it mightn't sell. We may not be able to attract those companies, those international companies here. What is it that we could do to minimize our risk and to ensure that we stand the best chance? Because all you guys spoke about, Freeport has the infrastructure, Freeport is very near, 2020, our location is so near, 68 miles. Yeah, we know that. But Africa has gold, diamonds, all kinds of stuff, and they still fail it. You know what I mean? So we do have it. What can we do to make sure that this thing happens? Thank you.
Definitely. Great question. I'm going to start and answer the question by asking just a simple question. I know James knows the answer as well. How many of you have heard of an area called Research Triangle Park? Okay, that's in North Carolina. That's where I went to grad school. That's where James went to school as well. NC State, he went to St. Aug. But here's the thing. When you talk about, and what they did, they started RTP back in the 50s and the 60s. Back then, there was just a bunch of land between Raleigh, Durham, and Chapel Hill. Okay? And so the people who owned the land said, you know what? We want to create RTP to be a research and development hub for the Southeast. Now, how do you do that? Same thing for Grand Bahama. You want to make it a tech hub. So the first thing you need to understand is that who are the constituents that are going to help make that happen? In the RTP case, it was the landowner, it was the universities, and it was the government. And let me show you how those old things come together. If you look at the landowner, there's a bunch of land that everybody owned, just this huge space there. The second thing was, so that was available and readily available. The second thing was the universities. We had the universities, NC State, Carolina, and Duke, all within 30 miles of each other, that had research programs going on. So these individual universities got research dollars from the federal government. They had a lot of graduate students, a lot of R&D that was going on. Then you had the government, state of North Carolina. So the whole question was, how do we get businesses to relocate to North Carolina to do their research and development? How do we make that happen? Because prior to that, a lot of R&D that was done in the U.S. was done in the Northeast. So you heard of things like Poughkeepsie, New York, and a lot of those things up in Buffalo and around the Northern Virginia area. That's where a lot of the R&D was done, in the Northeast. So what the government did is they said, you know what, let's create policies that allowed these organizations to come down here, get land for next to nothing, essentially, benefit from the universities that are here, create pro-growth policies, and allow them to come in. Now here's what happened. You had IBM, came in from Manassas, Virginia, started to relocate and brought people down to RTP. Pretty soon you had people like Burroughs Wellcome. You had a number of different R&D companies that came down because you know what? These companies are in competitive market space. Once they saw what IBM did, everybody said, you know what? They're my competitor. I want to make sure that I am doing what they're doing because we have to compete. So once the government, once the private sector, and once the university environment created that environment for those R&D companies to thrive, the first big one came and everybody else followed. Because they want to be where their competitors are. And RTP began to grow and to flourish. And if you do any stat in the US for the highest concentration of PhDs in the United States, is in Research Triangle Park, North Carolina. So what has to happen, if you summarize it here for Grand Bahama, is that you have several stakeholders here. You have the Port Authority, which owns a lot of land around here. You have the government, and you have the people, and now you have University of the Bahamas, which has a northern campus here. So now the question becomes, what is it that the stakeholders who are here now can do from a policy perspective that will create an environment that will attract technology companies to this area? All you need to do is figure out what has to be done, go out, sell it, make it known, and all you've got to do is get that first elephant to come, or a series of very innovative people to come. Once you do that, everybody else will come. But it takes those stakeholders to get into the room, think strategically, put all politics aside, and think about the future. And once you do that, and if governments do what governments should do, which means create an environment and don't interfere, then the markets will drive what's going to go on here from an innovation perspective.
I think Dr. Moxie hit the nail on the head. I don't know if any of y'all watched the movie Field of Dreams. You remember in the movie, I think Kevin Costner said, build it and they shall come. And I think that exactly is the point here. But I think also outside of that, from a project management perspective, coming out of these sessions, we need to come up with a strategic plan and develop milestones, short and long term, and develop a steering committee that we actually can meet with the minds here, not just local, but also international. And the thing is, what I realize a lot of projects I work on with private and public customers, we always tend to leave certain key stakeholders out of the conversation. And all of us here in the ICT arena are all stakeholders a part of this. Because at the end of the day, like Minister Thompson said, if once Freeport succeeds, we all succeed. So we all are stakeholders. So coming out of this seminar, the key is we got to develop that strategic plan that's going to take us to where we need to be.
I think one thing we do have to keep in mind is that we are a boutique. We are not India. And we're going to have a lot more success if we support each other than if we compete at the lowest price. I've built a number of incubators around, in empowerment zones around the United States, and the ones that succeeded because all of the participating companies supported each other, bought each other's products, weren't necessarily driven to only consume the least expensive option. In Harbor Island, you know, we've crafted about 95 businesses in the last 20 years because we don't opt for the lowest common denominator. We understand the importance of buying Bahamian. We do it as much as we can. We look forward to developing the e-commerce platforms where we can sell Eleuthera pineapples on a friggin' online exchange. There's no reason why we can't. Everybody asks. You've got Don Ricardo rum here in Freeport. That's the best coconut rum in the entire world. There are markets waiting to be had, whether it's Sands or Kalik. Technology exports, branded, made in the Bahamas, made in Grand Bahama, is going to carry a lot more socioeconomic impact than made in China, as it should. And I think if we commit to a sustainable climate, both economically and technologically, we're way ahead of the game.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Because we're gonna take. Okay, that's 3, 4. Okay, those are gonna be. Oh well, we got another one in the back. Okay. Oh, gee. Okay. Let's try to do this quickly so we get everybody in. I guess I opened the floodgates, right? I asked you. Okay, let's go.
All right, I'm going to try to be very quick because mine is not so much a question as a statement. My name is Sheila Robinson. I'm a veteran teacher, and my qualifications are mathematics and ICT. I came here in 1989 to what was then Freeport Anglican High School and started a computer education program there. And some of the comments that you've been making that I really, really found interesting today, and I feel very positive about this whole summit. I'm so sorry that most of the students had to leave by now, including mine. One of the biggest problems that I have come across in the last 28 years teaching IT here is this lack of consistency and follow-through with the policies. The examination system completely needs revamping. At the moment, in the last term, I've taught in 3 schools on this island, Sunland, now BMES, and there we started the first primary computer program at Discovery, which is BMES now, Sunland, and Lucayan International. And in each of those, I'm now back at Sunland again. In the last 3 schools, I've implemented Google Classroom. We use a Google Enterprise, which is free for education, for non-profit, for not-for-profit. All of our students and all of our faculty have email accounts and administration and school board. And we are trying to go paperless as much as possible and green. My students that were with me today receive all their assignments via websites and use email to communicate. And they want to be engineers, computer technicians, and so on. And I think there's quite a lot of people still in the room that recognize me, including Mr. Thompson, who was in my first homeroom. A lot of the people that are now here as individuals who work in technology and own computer companies. But the individual is a key thing again, and I can't remember if it was Ms. Burns or Mr. Adley that raised that in your part. We are not seeing a lot of project management and team development. And that's something we're trying to work on in the curriculum. But curriculum change needs to be approved from the top, from the Ministry of Education. I am fighting to keep, and in fact I had to fight for the name change, ICT, in the curriculum and teaching it in the form of information technology in a global society. Because it isn't just about learning how to use the technology, it's how it impacts our daily lives and businesses and services like health, medicine, education, everything, and the social and ethical responsibility that goes along with that. So I was pleased to see words like the digital divide on the program, and I love the way, I had quite a few notes, but I really like the way you've all addressed it. I think it's so positive, and I just hope that government and ministry are listening to what you have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Andrew Conway. I am what someone earlier described as a digital nomad. I'm a consultant who's worked for the past 30 years for various companies in and around Silicon Valley. I'm trying to retire, but my clients won't let me. In the past 10 years, I've spent at least half my time here on Grand Bahama. And I think, so this is a very exciting presentation for me today. I would like to thank all the panel members. I'm particularly impressed by Dr. Moxie. Thank you very much, sir. I think it was Kimberly made a very important point that programming talent is out there, and let's not just restrict it to kids. So I'd like to ask the panel, what can we do? Oh, and I should say, I think it only takes about 6 months to be a good programmer. I told that to my number 2 son, who had a 2-year music degree and was trying to make a living as a musician, and he decided he wanted to make money. He took my word for it, and he's now making a 6-figure salary for a Silicon Valley startup. So 6 months, seriously. What can we do for the people who've already been through the educational system, but who may have programming skills that haven't been realized, to help them realize that here in the Bahamas? For the adults, the wonderful men and women out there who are maybe underemployed at the moment and could be programming or doing other jobs in high tech. Thank you.
I think what we can do is we can begin an aggressive build-out of technology enrichment centers in the communities that compose as multi-use facilities throughout the Bahamas. And basically, it allows for learning, it allows for business development, incubation, acceleration, etc. And we can strategically place them on islands, interconnect them using technology where, say, someone like myself can be on Grand Bahama, engage those individuals in Eleuthera and other places. And so the information, the technology is there, the infrastructure is there, and we just need to embrace it.
Thank you. I think we have someone on the other side. Thank you.
So I don't necessarily agree that we need technology enrichment centers on all of the islands. I think Google did it best. We organize the world's information, and everybody has access to it, regardless of where they are in the world. There are, what's the MOOC? I think Coursera? Yes, Coursera. Is online. Udemy, online. Khan Academy. Any others that you guys know about? EDX. YouTube. Linda. I think every person here kind of knows at least one platform that someone can take advantage of. And where that really starts from is you actually having the initiative. Nothing was handed to anybody on this stage.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're asking what can somebody go do if they have these skills? They can go build something. And if they don't know, be a magician. Go create something out of nothing. And if you're not quite sure what to go build, go just listen for a problem. Listen for somebody complaining about something. Take a step back and go, how could I fix that?
One of the things too, and this goes back even to the learning side of it as well. I mean, there's so much resources out there to learn, especially on YouTube, on the internet. You can Google things. And so if people want to develop, be developers or software developers, one of the very first things that I think needs to happen is sort of demystify this whole thing of developing software. It is not that tough to do, to tell you the truth. It isn't. So you have to say to yourself mentally, if you're a young person, listen, I want to develop software. You start fundamentally. You can go on the internet, go to YouTube, which is one of my favorite resources. I have to get a graduate degree. I want to learn something, I go to YouTube, or I go to Google. You go through, you type in what you want, and you learn it. Now here's the thing, and I believe it's Dr. Higgs who said this earlier, and it's the same thing for me. Never stop learning. The best skill you can ever develop is a skill on how to learn things quickly. If I were to go through my background and what I've done, what I'm doing right now today has nothing to do with what I did my PhD in. Everything I did I had to learn after I finished my graduate degree. Everything. Remember the first software development I really did, and I kid you not, was at Bell Labs. I had done Fortran. Now this was a long time ago. And the project that I had to do was in C. Now let me tell you how funny it was. When Bell Labs did the interview for me, they had like a little cocktail party kind of thing set up. And they invited students, and they talked and went around the room. And I thought it was the strangest thing. I'm like, when is the interview going to be? And they're like, okay. And I get a letter in the mail and say, you're hired. I'm like, what? I'm hired. Okay. So I show up there. And they said, now we have a project, Donovan, where you have to do programming in C. I'm like, I've never done C. Okay, fine. Back then, now this is how old I am, they had courses on videotape. And they said, listen, you have to do an accelerated course, go to our lab, we're going to give you a week, 8 hours a day, and you got to get through these courses, and then the following week, you've got to start now developing in C. So I had to do it. But because I had learned how to learn, I had learned how best I learned, I was able to learn those skills. And I did it very, very quickly. So, and one of the things that my supervisor at Bell Labs told me, he said, Donovan, whatever you do in life, no matter how old you get, never ever think you're going to have time to come back and learn something again. Always take advantage of the time you have at that specific moment, because you will never have the opportunity to come back and relearn something that you should have learned. So anybody who's young, anybody who's old, even my age, I'm constantly learning things new all the time. You think about that, because when we talked about earlier about it's a knowledge economy, that's exactly what it is. You are constantly learning, and I'll talk about one more pet peeve I have with my fellow Bahamians. You'll talk to a lot of Bahamians and they'll say, man, I have 20 years experience. Why are they firing me? Why I can't get promoted? Listen, if you have 20 years experience doing the wrong thing or the same thing over and over again, why am I going to promote you? Normally, people who get promoted are people who demonstrate that they have the ability to learn and change. And if you don't have that mindset and think that because you could claim 20 years experience doing something gets you a promotion, you are thinking incorrectly. Okay? So we need to develop this mindset of having to learn constantly.
Thank you. Let's take
I just have a quick comment here.
Sure.
You talked about how we remediate adults and how to get adults into technology. And I'm of the frame of mind that you don't learn the old stuff, as Dr. Moxie said. When Thomas Edison invented the light bulb and all the phonograph and everything, he went upstairs into his attic and he took some string and he took some wax and some foil and he made some stuff. If you wanted to improve the phonograph in the 1970s or 80s, you had to learn transmission theory, transistor theory, you had to learn all sorts of acoustics and everything. It would take you forever. We are at a strange place now in technology where we have brand new emergent technologies that are coming out every single day. There's five core technologies: IoT, which you mentioned. There's the artificial intelligence. There's machine learning, which is different from artificial intelligence. There's blockchain, and then there's big data, which is analytics. So if we want to remediate some adults, the fields are now wide open. Half of the stuff isn't even invented yet. You have the ability to go for it. So don't, as he said, if you have 20 years of experience, don't try to learn that old stuff. Emergent technology, you can invent it. You can invent the future.
Okay, before we get excited here now, we do have another day of this conference tomorrow, and all of these panelists and some other persons will be here, and so we'll have the same opportunity tomorrow to ask questions. So I want to wrap up with two last. You can go.
All right, good afternoon. I have a simple question, just wondering how we'll be able to keep track of everything here, because, you know, we have a lot of talk and stuff, but to actually see the progress manifest is a different thing.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the question was, and I don't think they do either. So could you just start it again?
I just want to know how we'd be able to follow up on everything here, like after this whole summit has been completed.
Well, Keen Eye Media is recording this two-day event,
yeah.
And also I believe that's a Kwesi Thompson answer. How would you like to address that, Senator? Okay, he said he'll talk. He's taking some notes, and he's going to address that at the end of the conference tomorrow. If we could just take one more question here, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Mr. Ricardo Barrow, and I'm happy to see this summit take place. We've talked about a lot of things today, and particularly the first question was asked by the lady who works for NEMA. This question is to the panelists. They're moving modern technologies all around the world, and the Bahamas is trying to put itself on the stage to compete. We're talking about possibly moving into being involved in the World Trade Organization, and like other persons in the audience, there are a lot of questions. The silliest question is the one that's never asked, okay? So my question is, what redundancies do we have in place for major disasters within our own country, right? As she asked the question, because it affects not only our telecommunications, our economics, our education, our tourism, all these sectors are actually affected by disaster, okay? I think we've been spared the brunt of most of the storms that have just passed throughout our islands. So what is there in place presently, and can anybody confirm as to whether or not the infrastructure that we presently have in place in the Bahamas meets the requirements or according to global standards? Do we presently have that in place here in the Bahamas to say that we can sustain ourselves if we were hit with a Cat 5, Cat 6?
Mr. Alive is going to take that one. Join us on the stage, Mr. Alive. I'll even give up the podium for that one.
As I said earlier, the Bahamas has everything it needs, especially from a technological perspective, to do all this, and even through hurricanes. You have, through what we've done in Alive, an LTE network that is less than a year old. It celebrates its anniversary this next week. We have wireless data speeds on our network, typically of 20 megabits a second. It's a better network than exists in Miami or Silicon Valley, where the wireless network, half the time I'm there, doesn't work properly. There is fiber and redundant fiber from both providers off the island. Donovan showed the map earlier. The Bahamas is connected to the internet. From a connectivity perspective, everything is here. My team, the members of my team who've worked and lived in the region for many years between us, know all about hurricanes. We know about the devastating earthquake in Haiti. We have done everything to make that network as resilient as it can be. We've got backup power on every single site, and we've just gone through 2 tests, Hurricane Matthew last year, when we'd got the network up in Grand Bahama and New Providence, and this year. This year we didn't lose any sites at all through the hurricane. We actually probably have a more resilient network than they've built in Florida. So everything is here from a technological perspective. Let's not look for the barriers, please. Let's look at what we have and build on it.
I just have a quick statement on that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Can I make one comment?
Oh, sorry, go right ahead.
So, Mr. Alive just mentioned that we do have the technology infrastructure in place. Donovan mentioned, Dr. Moxie, mentioned that you have to continually learn, and there's no point in being able to do the same thing. I've spoken to a lot of business people over the last 1.5 to 2 years in the Bahamas, and you spoke about resiliency, and it's very important, specifically to the young lady that works at NEMA, for you to have a BCP plan, a business continuity plan, right? The challenge, however, is that the IT specialists in the Bahamas are still operating in a very archaic way, so they're not moving ahead or changing with the tide. So, for example, there's no reason why any company should have a server in their physical location. How are you now protecting yourself against the hurricane or the fire that could happen at any given moment in time? Where's your resiliency? So granted, we may have the technology, and he's absolutely right, we do have it, but if you are not innovating on top of it, it is useless to you. So the question you should not be asking us is whether or not we have the technology infrastructure in place. It's whether or not you are employing the proper principles in your organization to leverage that infrastructure.
I can do it. It's called woman power. Thank you very much. Now, again, please, don't be upset with me. The MacPac will be here tomorrow to moderate. You all can ask some more questions, and we have these panelists available. But before we leave, let me just quickly say I want to remind people about the Taste of Port Lucayan tomorrow night at 7 o'clock, and shuttles will be available with regards to that. Also, at 5 o'clock, we have the Blue Marlin Business Innovative Challenge, and those panelists for the challenge, if you could just meet Miss Hart at the end of the stage so she can give you some instructions. Is there anything else, Senator, I have forgotten? I do want to, again, thank the sponsors. We've heard from our title sponsor, the Grand Bahama Port Authority, Alive, our innovation sponsor, but we also have Network Security Consultant Group, Cloud Carib, Quantum Data Solutions, McKell, the Grand Bahama Island Tourism Board, Kenai Media, and Global Sun Integration Management. Let's give all of our sponsors a round of applause. Okay. Again, it's been a first great day. Please give a round of applause to all of our presenters. We start promptly tomorrow at 9 a.m. Okay. I think they're giving me plenty of instructions, so I think Ms. Hart should take the stage. I've enjoyed moderating this event today, and thank you for your attention. Okay.
Did she do an awesome job? Let's give our moderator. She kept us very much in tune. She moved the ceremony today smoothly along. And so just as a recap for tomorrow, most of our sessions tomorrow focuses on innovation and education. Of course, we have the University of the Bahamas panel. We also have one of our own very inventors, Laron Burrows. He is also from Silicon Valley, who will be here. We have STEM board, Dr. Jervis Salsa, and of course, he's also representing Aisha Bowe, another girl power. And so we're excited about that, and of course, we'll be announcing the winners tomorrow of the Blue Marlin Business Innovation Challenge, and we have others who will be speaking about developing tech incubators, accelerators, and we have, of course, another dynamic panel, Spotlight on Bahamians, integrating Bahamians abroad with local development. And so there's just so much we have to offer. You don't want to miss it. And so be here on time tomorrow. The shuttles, again, they will be moving about beginning at 8 a.m. So you can park your car at the various parking locations, and a shuttle will be here to bring you here. And so God bless, drive safe. We will see you tomorrow. And so for those persons who are participating in the Blue Marlin Business Challenge at this time, the panel, I'll see you, the panel, and those who are participating, giving their pitch, we're just asking you to have a seat to the far back of the room. Take care. See you tomorrow. God bless.